Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 87. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Friday show. And Dave, we have a whole lot to talk about today. Ben's contract signed, sealed, delivered. We'll get into the analysis of it a little bit later on in the show, but I do want to talk about kind of just the details of it. But finally official, Ben coming back in 2021.
Yeah, boy, it didn't take long after Art Rooney II said, so let it be written, so let it be done. I mean, look, the writing's been on the wall, obviously, for this for quite some time. It just took some time, to get to a spot. They probably wanted to get a good idea of where the cap was going to be. They probably wanted to get a good idea of where, maybe what kind of roster they could put together and see maybe some of these early moves that are happening during the 2 week out frame where several players around the league are getting released. So, and as we've said all along, Ben's birthday is usually when we get this sort of news, and it happened. Well, the official word came down 2 days after Ben's birthday there. So, I mean, it's going pretty much as status quo at this point, and I think the biggest takeaway right now is the fact that after this Roethlisberger move is the team should be under whatever the salary cap number is, assuming that number at the floor is $180 million, which has already been collectively bargained to be the new low floor. So if that is indeed the case, as we sit here today, the Steelers are under the cap.
Hooray! Who would have thought? I mean, technically, we knew they had to, but it's nice for them to finally get there. What is it, just under $3 million under the cap?
Depends on what you want to, what number you want to use. It's probably safe to use the $180 million number right now.
Use that.
Yeah, I've kind of bounced around between, being having my glass half full at $185 million, but probably the safe thing to do right now until we hear. And boy, here we are less than 2 weeks out, and we still don't know what the number is. I guess that shouldn't be surprising. But let's use $180 million as the number, not counting any of the exclusive rights tenders that might have signed, and we know, or at least we think that we know, that J.C. Hassenauer is one of those at this point. But not counting that, but counting everything else, and that includes rollover amounts and everything, I have the Steelers at approximately $3.1 million under a $180 million cap number. So
Gotcha.
Adjust that how you will. I mean, obviously, if the cap number comes in at $185 million, you could add $5 million to that, so that would make it $8.1 million. But until we know what the final number is, at least we know they're under. So, there's obviously a couple more things we'll talk later in the show, I'm sure, about things that might be forthcoming here in the next couple of weeks or next, 10, 12 days, really, and to see how far under they can get under this cap and if it'll make a difference when it comes to potentially re-signing one or two of their own unrestricted free agents. But the deal is done with Ben.
Right, and let's talk about that deal. And it felt like the answer to the Steelers' question of how do we redo Ben's deal was yes. They explored, it felt like, every avenue possible to get that cap number down as much as possible for 2021, with Ben taking a pay cut, with them doing the voidable years that we've talked about endlessly. I know you can explain it in greater detail, but it really seems like the Steelers, unconventionally in these unconventional times, explored every single avenue to make this thing work.
Yeah, they ended up doing the best of both worlds. And in fact, one scenario, I didn't think they'd go this route, but I think at one point during the several times that we talked about Roethlisberger and what could possibly happen with his contract is if he did take a pay cut, what would that pay cut look like? What would the max amount be? And what would that look like via the voidable years. And I think specifically, if you go back, I don't know, 6, 7 shows or whatnot, we talked about the possibility of $5 million probably being the most he would take a cut if he did take a pay cut, and what that would look like. Well, that's the route that he ended up going. Ben Roethlisberger was scheduled to make $19 million originally in 2021. He has given back, as part of this redo, he has given back $5 million of that. So, look, say what you will about the Steelers' decision to bring him back. Say what you will about Roethlisberger's comments, specifically several weeks ago about the text, evidently to Bouchette about, in so many words, willing to work with him and give some money back. He gave some money back, and I really didn't think he would or should really give any of that back, because look, $19 million is not a lot of money to pay a quarterback of his stature in today's NFL, and I don't want to hear any part of, well, he's already made $1 bazillion already. I mean, we're talking about this year and this year alone, but he gave back $5 million. So what in turn is happening here, at least way it's going to probably be framed now, is this rework is essentially a 1-year, $14 million contract. Okay, but on top of it, as we've speculated all along, and I have since going all the way back to August of last year, there's probably going to be 4 voidable years in this thing, and it looks like that's the case. There's 4 extra years added on to his contract now. What they have done is they've taken a good part of that $14 million, specifically $12.925 million. They've turned that into a signing bonus, and then that gets prorated over the entire 5 years of the deal now. What that has in turn done is decreased Roethlisberger's cap charge in 2021 by $15.34 million. The scenario we've been discussing all along has been a $14.34 million. So we apologize to listeners that we missed it by $1 million. We are, I'm probably going to get taken around back and get some lickings.
Shame.
Right. I'm probably not going to be able to show my face on Twitter, name on Twitter for at least 25 minutes.
I was going to say face on Twitter. You're doing a good job with that.
There we go. My name. But long and short of it, they cleared $15.34 million in 2021. Ben gave a little bit back as part of that process. Now, what we don't really know yet, and a lot of people won't care about it, my nerd self will, is what the language looks like in these voidable years. What are the dates that it voids? What are the base salary amounts in the voidable years? Because that could go a long way, as we've talked already a couple times about what Drew Brees is doing with the Saints, and how he's going to help ease kind of the dead money flow for them more than likely this year, assuming his retirement comes after June 1st. So it'll be interesting to see, because right now, as a result of this extension, that can got kicked a little bit more. There's now the potential for $10.34 million out there in dead money, assuming 2021 is Roethlisberger's last season, which it really does indeed look like that's going to be the case. However, if there's some sort of mechanism in this void language that maybe allows this thing to void, either in 2022 after June 1st, or maybe both have to decide as well, whatever that language is. And obviously I'm speculating here and probably shouldn't, because I don't know how this is going to go, but it will be interesting to see if this thing voids right after the 2021 season. And if that's the case, then it's going to be $10.34 million in dead money in 2022, or if somehow there's a way that this thing will void after June the 1st, and if that's the case, it would make a dead money charge of just 2.585 in 2022, with the other 7.755 dead coming in 2023. regardless, $10.34 million is not that huge of a dead money hit to take if you have to eat all of it in 2022, especially if the TV deals come in like we think they are, and especially if the cap finally gets escalating like we think it's going to do. It's just one other piece of this puzzle that we don't know yet. That'll be interesting to finally find out what it is. But big picture here. Ben's base salary in 2021, $1.075 million, which is the minimum, which is what we expected. His cap charge is now $25.91 million, and once again, that cleared $15.34 million in 2021 salary cap space, which is $1 million more than what we projected.
Is the language of the voidable years the only thing we don't know about right now? Is there anything else from this contract you're still waiting to get information on?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Yeah, is there? Did that $5 million get turned into any not likely to be earned incentives or something? I can't say that it's not. I mean, there's no reports out there. Was it a true $5 million get back, or are we going to find out in a couple of days that Roethlisberger can earn $5 million by the Steelers winning the Super Bowl? Right. Now here's the thing. It's obviously not likely to be earned, which would not go against the Steelers' cap number this year. But and look, it would be in fact, I think they would probably throw a parade if the Steelers won a Super Bowl in 2021. I'm going out on a limb there. But let's say that was in the language of the not likely to be earned. They did go on to win the Super Bowl. Roethlisberger did get the $5 million. That would obviously be as a debit on 2022 season there. What we also don't know is we don't know what the voidable year base salaries are. Not that they probably matter in the grand scheme of things, but we don't know that. All we really know at this point is what's going to happen in 2021 as far as base salary, as far as bonus proration goes, and then go from there, and then we'll wait for the other details to kind of come out here in the next 2, 3, 4 days.
I wanted to ask you about the pay cut that Ben took, because we didn't totally discount that possibility, and I specifically remember saying if Ben takes a pay cut, it'll be a small pay cut a la Peyton Manning in conjunction with the voidable year extension.
We're not going to get credit. We don't get any extra credit for that, but carry on.
Anyway, I wanted to the reality of it. What do you think the incentive was for Ben to take the pay cut? Because it didn't save them a lot of money. I mean, now granted, every $1 million helps in a scenario like this, so maybe that is just truly the answer, and I know it relieves dead money for next year as well. But do you think it was really just more of a show of good faith of backing up his words, or them just trying to get every penny out under the couch cushions?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a great point that you make, because I mean, look at it. Did it help much this year?
No. Saved what, $1 million?
It saved $1 million more in cap space by taking that $5 million pay cut. That's it. One extra $1 million. It's great PR on Roethlisberger's end, right? I mean,
that's an expensive PR.
right. Sure it is. More than anything, I think the biggest byproduct of him taking the $5 million pay cut is that there's $4 million less in potential dead money in future years. That's the biggest thing. But if you're talking about immediate relief, and let's just face it here, what was the talk all since all off season, especially from Rooney? We've got to get his cap number down. And okay, congratulations, you got another extra $1 million in that. Right. Look, I don't want to just downplay and say it's only $1 million, because in a cap strap team,
it all matters.
It all matters, but that's one of the main reasons why I didn't think he'd give back money, because it really didn't matter. But on the second part of it is. It is great PR. You can't say that Ben didn't take one for the team to come back, and it kind of it kind of puts a rubber stamp on that quote or that text to Ed Bouchette, several weeks ago. So, and look, our new terrible take. I hope people are listening to that. That comes out Monday through Friday at 5:00. You should be able to get that in your podcast feed there. A little 3-minute kind of mini podcast, if you will, that Alex and I are doing 5 times a week. But I hopefully punctuated that. Kudos to Ben here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did. I think you outlined that really well in the take yesterday. And yeah, kudos to Ben for backing up his word, because now he's making only $14 million, which is just a couple million more than Taysom Hill of the Saints. Crazy to put Ben in that category. But yeah, I think it was partially a show of good faith, partially trying to pinch every single penny and just explore every single avenue to make this thing work. And
what was the one thing that we framed kind of the $4 million question around Ben Roethlisberger? Well, I mean, it technically became a $3 million question, right? So, they could have saved another $3 million and not kicked $10 million into future years of potential dead money. But what would you rather have? And I know this is still not going to change the mind of several people listening to this podcast, but personally, I think all the way around the right decisions were made here, and I included that in my take yesterday as well too. I think a good part on Roethlisberger's part to get back $5 million, and I think the right decision is to bring him back for one more season, and it still doesn't prevent you from. If a quarterback, as we've said several times, if a quarterback's there in the first round that you like, go get him.
Right.
And if you're unable to do that, and if the season goes off the rails, go ahead and get a good look at Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins and or whatever other quarterback you might have, might have around at that point there. So I think this delivers the best of both worlds, and really the only downside to this. In my opinion, is you don't have the extra $3 million to work with this offseason with cap space, and you have a little over $10 million in future dead money to account for. But that's just going to be a minor speed bump as we sit here today. So why wouldn't you at least get the quarterback back and make one final charge at this thing?
Yeah, those benefits of a tiny bit more cap space and not having the dead money to me weren't good enough reasons to move on from Ben, and that's why I laugh at the guys like Mike Tannenbaum and others that say, "Oh, this was such a big mistake for the Steelers. They're stuck to this guy," which they aren't. I mean, I don't know where they're getting that information from. And I would just ask, Mike Tannenbaum, if I could talk to him, was what was your plan? Beat this plan. How do you create a better roster, a better team for 2021? And nothing about this contract with Ben stops his team from wanting to add towards the future if they want to, and I think they should. So I'm with you. I think this is a best of both worlds scenario.
Look, are they likely to win the Super Bowl in 2021? I think you and I have agreed several times that the task is tall, my friend. But I paint here is the most optimism you're going to get out of me right now up until the season starts. Get in the playoffs and anything can happen. Period. Right?
Right. Yeah, I know we've talked about that before, and I think that is the mindset of this team, is they still believe they can make the playoffs. You do that, who knows what will happen from there.
Would it be as optimistic of take if Roethlisberger isn't on the team in 2021?
No, of course the Steelers' chances of winning decrease significantly.
All right, so people say, well, you're setting back. Look, if you're going to go ahead and cut Roethlisberger or not bring him back, go ahead and skin the whole cat, too. Cut Joe Hayden, cut Vince Williams. Who else could we cut?
Castro. I don't know if you want to
the list is long, right? Go ahead and go 6-10 or 6-11 then. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, that's what we wanted to do, Dave, but once again, I think this goes back and the talk that we've had and the projecting that we have is all based off of words that come out of really Kevin Colbert and Art Rooney II's mouth. Plain and simple. They honestly believe that they can make a run at the Super Bowl in 2021. Whether or not we think that or anybody else thinks that does not matter. So that being their mantra, so to speak, is why things have played out that the way they have. They honestly believe that they can build a team now around Roethlisberger that will give them a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. And now we'll just have the joy of sitting back and watching it happen. And yeah, Alex and I, or at least I think Alex is, if the right quarterback's on the board there and they could potentially get that quarterback, then hell yeah, draft a quarterback in the in the first round, even if you have to move up 7, 8 spots to do it. But on the flip side, don't forget that you're still trying to compete for the Super Bowl this year.
Right, exactly. And I'm still all for aggressively going after a quarterback if someone you believe is a franchise caliber player is available, whether that's he's falling to you or more likely you trade up to go up there and get him. I'm totally cool with that. My last question for you on Ben's contract, and maybe you don't know the answer to this because you want to see the language of the voidable years, but based on the terms we know right now, do you believe that Ben, from the Steelers standpoint, contractually 2021 will be his final season?
Oh, no, you're not going to pay me in that.
No, I can't. Yeah, I can't get you on record right now.
No. Well, look, the obvious thing is that there's a very, extremely 95% probably chance right now until we see the specific language of this thing. I mean, a very good chance that 2021 is going to be it for him. Mm-hmm. However, what if this thing doesn't void immediately? What if Ben just, what if he has a fantastic season and let's say the salary is very reasonable in 2022 of, I'm just going to throw out like $25 million out there, okay? And let's assume that the cap escalates the way that we think that it's going to escalate in 2022. And let's say they don't draft a quarterback this year. Why wouldn't you consider maybe bringing him back? Sure. Look, I'm not advocating that. You just asked me, do I think 2021 is definitely his final season? Obviously, I think there's a high probability of it, but I just wanted to leave myself a little bit of room to jump out of the plane with the parachute there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think you can make any guarantees right now. I wouldn't either, but just based on the terms, I understand we still need to see the voidable language or voidable, deal language, whatever you want to call it. But I'm of the belief that based on these terms, this is more likely than not Ben's final season. I had that thought already before this, and after this, I'm still in that camp.
Stranger things have happened, but never say never, at least until we see the language. Now, if the language says it voids, then, it's going to go up that extra 2 or 3%, Mm-hmm. But we'll know probably by the same time next week what the language of that contract says.
I'm going to send you down a rabbit hole here, so I apologize. But even if it does void basically immediately after the season ends or the start of 2022, and they still wanted to bring Ben back because he had an amazing season or whatever, how would that work?
I'll have to get with Joel Corey on that once we see the language, just to see what kind of obviously they would have to do something with the language and adjust the language, right? Mm-hmm. So there would have to be some sort of another contract powwow or something along those lines to change it. So I'm betting, and I might be wrong on this, but why wouldn't you at least, unless Ben's just animate and said, look, I'll trade you I'm going to trade you a voidable date for $5 million, which you very, very well could have, Mm-hmm. But why wouldn't you at least, if you're the Steelers, at least set yourself up to get past the June 1st date, right? I mean,
yeah, you think you want to build that escape hatch just in case,
right?
Sure.
And something for Ben too. Maybe Ben wants to play one more. If things work out right. So, mm-hmm. Put it this way, my prediction is that this contract is not going to void right after the 2021 season ends. But I am just the same. I won't be surprised if it does. Look, this is kind of uncharted territory, right?
Completely. They've never done a contract like this before. Correct?
Right. So we'll see. But I would think that they would, more than anything, I would at least think they would leave themselves a little bit of escape room for the June 1st date. and being able to not that the 10 million's a lot of dead money to eat, but it sure would be easier to eat, 2.5 or 2.5 in 2022 than it would a little more than 10, and then eat the other 7.7 in 2023. So I don't know. Let's go back up the rabbit hole. We'll know this same time next week. I have a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was going to ask you, when do you think we'll know about the language? Because those things don't always get reported immediately or sometimes at all. But I imagine
Joe Corey will have it.
Joe Corey will have it. Okay, cool. You think in a week from now?
Yeah, but once that thing gets filed with the NFLPA, which okay, will be within 7 days, I'm sure.
Gotcha. Is there anything else in Ben's contract you want to touch on that I haven't asked, or we haven't talked about, or addressed anything else about it that you wanted to make note of?
No, I not over. I think we've beat this horse up pretty good over the last really since August, right?
Right. So anything now that it's done and we can stop speculating and talking about, what could happen, anything surprise you the most? Was it the pay cut? Was it anything else? Or do you think everything was pretty much as anticipated?
The only thing was him giving back the $5 million was the biggest, I think, overall surprise in this. Even though it was a plausible aspect of it, it wasn't going to be more than the $5 million. But the biggest surprise of this whole thing. I mean, look, we've been talking about 4 voidable years forever, right? And how there would be no new money in this. So the only minor surprising aspect of it was him giving back $5 million. At least we think he has. We'll see if there's any not likely to be earns in there, which is essentially giving back. I mean, why wouldn't you reward the quarterback an extra $5 million if he won the Super Bowl? So, but that would be the single most surprising aspect of this whole thing, of our speculation since August.
Not that it was surprising, but my favorite part of this was the way the Steelers announced it with new contract. Very careful language, not an extension. We're not going to call it that. We're not going to say it's a pay cut. It's a new contract. It just made me laugh the way they framed it, because as soon as they said that, you went, okay, that's some unusual wording about a contract for your quarterback.
Yeah, but it still kind of leaves it open-ended too for maybe one more year. I don't know, but they were definitely careful in that, and they didn't want to come out and say it's an extension like he's going to play past this year. Right. They just said, new contract, right? So
right. It's like going to a car lot and it just says car. Not used, not certified, just car. It's like, well, it's open to interpretation how this thing's going to go, but it's done. And so that was the big shoe to drop. And so in terms of other things that can and likely will happen to free up additional cap space, we have the Stephon Tuitt restructure, which should happen, I think, in pretty short order. And then in terms of other moves, of course, we're watching Vince Williams. Is he going to be a cap casualty? I think those odds probably are going up. At least they're not going down. Right now, what other moves could this team make to free up some extra cap space?
Obviously, we're watching for the Tuitt thing. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet, to be quite honest with you. And it did not hit. There was no movement in the NFLPA number this morning either. Now, there's still obviously a lot of time left overall all to get this done here. But Tuitt would clear almost $4 million in cap space, $3.9625 million to be. To be exact there. And then what's going to happen with Chris Boswell and Derek Watt? How far down the restructure hole do they want to go? You can free up another almost $2 million in salary cap space by going that way. 1.9275 combined between Boswell and Derek Watt if you fully restructure both those guys. I wonder what's going on in Vince Williams' world right now. We've talked about it for quite some time. It doesn't sound, I know a lot of people have been speculating about Joe Hayden, but Joe Hayden kind of put the kibosh on that. At least he's predicting he's not going to be a salary cap casualty. And as we've said pretty much all along, what's the trade-off there? I mean, you got Ben coming back. Do you really is the $6.34 million that you would save in cutting Joe Hayden worth it if you think that you can use him? Now, obviously, if Ben's out the door, to me, you go ahead and say goodbye to Joe Hayden as well too. But I don't think I didn't think he was going to go anywhere prior to the start of this week. Now I really don't think he's going to go anywhere, and it would be surprised. Vince, though, that's a whole different story. If there's one player right now under contract for 2021 that would be primed to have his contract either terminated or lowered down to the NFL minimum, it's Vince Williams, because after displacement they could save $3.34 million in 2021 salary cap space. Hopefully they're going to him and they're going to give him the option of playing for the minimum, right? I mean, that's the best of both worlds, but would he take it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you're the Steelers, you just need to be very honest with Vince and be like, listen, man, we like you, we value you, but either you play for the minimum or we're going to have to cut you. And you just kind of give him that choice. And neither are good options, clearly. But it's going to be tough for him to stay. I mean, we'll see where this cap number comes in exactly. I do want to see maybe he does surprise and it comes in 185, which gives himself a chance. But if it's 180, 181, you're not going to cut Hayden. I don't think that's likely to happen at this point. Vince is certainly the most likely cap casualty, and we're seeing around the league right now. And I think some national media member termed it as a bloodbath is coming, and we're seeing a ton of veteran guys get cut, and the Steelers are not going to be immune to that.
Right. And I mean, he's it, right? I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, Ebron and DeCastro should be on that possible candidate casualty, potential salary cap casualty list as well too. Look, I'm not a huge Ebron fan, but I mean, what else? You already lost McDonald. Are you going to tell me that you're going to lose Ebron too? I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think you can rule out maybe even an extension for Ebron, right? At least you save a little bit of cap money that way. Once again, I don't think it's going to happen, at least not before March 17th rolls around. It could. I mean, just like we've talked about the Steven Nelson and David DeCastro probable extensions. Normally those things don't happen, but the Steelers before March, in March, normally they happen later in the summer when they're moving the chairs around on the Titanic, so to speak. So, I mean, to me, Vince is leading the list right now, right?
Sure. He is, yeah. That is the most likely and logical name to be cut right now, because you have Spillane who could start behind him. You could draft. You do have Marcus Allen, UG3. Not that those guys would be starters out of the gate, but there are some options there. So we'll see. We'll find out pretty soon. But yeah, we were seeing around the league just a ton of veteran guys get cut as everyone tries to get cap compliant before the 17th.
This could play into the Steelers' hands. If it's indeed the kind of the bloodbath that it's, people are projecting. I mean, that's pretty gory word overall, and you're talking about people's livelihoods. But we said all along that this cap reduction is probably going to hurt the middle class of NFL players, right? And it certainly looks like it's starting to shape up that way around the league. I think you're seeing some players that probably had the cap escalated that wouldn't be on the move, right? And if the market floods, which it's starting to, especially at some different positions, just so happens to be some positions that the Steelers need as well too. I think there's a good chance the Steelers might be able to take advantage of this and their free agency, shopping or Kevin Colbert dumpster diving, could result in a nice or a decent, I shouldn't say nice, a decent prize or two at a very, very low cost.
Extreme couponing, Kevin Colbert edition, probably about to happen here. And so before I ask you, I do want to talk about free agency here in a second. What do you project, just based on the moves you assume that they're going to make? What kind of cap space do you think they're going to have by the 17th? And let's just even assume it's $180 million as where the cap number comes in, just to be safe, and use that as the floor.
All right, take your shoes off. 3.1 million is what we have them as being under right now, right?
Okay, right.
Let's go ahead and call that 3 million with Hassenauer backing. So a nice even 3 million. let's go ahead and call it 3.9 with Tuitt. So we got us up to 6.9. Let's assume they go after Watt and Boswell restructures for another $2 million there. We'll round up this time there. So where are we at?
We're right around 9.
All right. Sorry, Vince. Let's get another 3.34 million there.
All right, so we're up over 12 at this point.
That's looking like it could about be the number, right?
So I would say between 10 to 12, depending on, because Watt, Boswell, we're not totally sure if they're going to redo those deals or not. So probably put them in the 10 to 12 range. And then again, if the cap number comes in, 183, 184, add a couple million to the pile.
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean, that's it's not great, but it's not terrible either.
You mean it's not salary cap hell?
All right.
You know, what have we been cautioning people all along? That, the media, we do this every year. The media says it's salary cap hell, kicking the cans, come back to haunt the Steelers, blah, blah, blah. And here we are. I mean, they got a potential of maybe being 12 under. And if you get that far under, I mean, it's plausible that maybe you can get Juju and Cameron Sutton back. At a minimum, I think you can get Cameron Sutton back with that space. I'm not going to slam dunk and say Juju's coming back, because my thought all along is that it's a higher probability that Juju's not coming back. But I don't think you can completely rule it out. Bud Dupree, he's gone, right? I mean, it would be a minor miracle if they got Bud Dupree back.
I'm still expecting Dupree and Hilton to be gone regardless of cap space available.
I mean, you can't re-sign them all in any given year. And I think Hilton's gone. I think Bud Dupree's gone. I think the highest probability of the remaining guys to return would be Cameron Sutton, as far as guys that you would want back. Who knows about Filer at this point? Filer's market price is going to be fun to watch here. I still don't think he's coming back, but I mean, if you could get him back on a 2 or 3 deal and keep that number down low enough, I suppose it's possible. But I think the two really to watch at this point, Alex, is Cameron Sutton and believe it or not, Juju.
Right, and Juju, for whatever it's worth, I don't like to do the whole Instagram comments too much, but he did, react to the news of Ben coming back and saying, let's talk. And so we'll see if they talk now that Ben's taken care of, and maybe they're getting more and more clarity on where that cap number is going to come in at.
Yeah, and what if you could pay him his fair market value and get his first year cap number around $6 million? You could probably stomach that, right? I mean, because you have roster displacement on top of it, right? So,
true.
There is that aspect. So for the low cap cost of maybe, let's say, around $5.5 million, if you could squeeze out a hole for $5.5 million. Maybe you can have Juju back.
Yeah, and so what would a Sutton first-year cap number look like? 2 to 3 million at post-displacement?
Probably. Yeah, that's a good guess. Yeah.
So 5.5 plus, let's just call it 3 for Sutton. That's 8.5. Let's assume they go 10 to 12. I mean, you can make it work. Again, it's tight, and you will not be able to re-sign everybody, obviously. But if you really wanted to make it work, if somebody said you had to make it work, you could.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, you would still have, we talk about the 2 lines in the sand, the March 17th line in the sand, and then the week 1 line in the sand. I mean, it goes without saying that this team would have a lot of work to do after that, because let's say they enter the draft with, let's say they get Juju back and Cameron Sutton back, but they only have, let's say, $3 million in cap space. Mm-hmm. You're a long way away from, because they'll want to enter the season with around $10 million in cap space just to have on hand. Mm-hmm. So you would have a lot of work to get to that point. And once again, you have the potential of a Steven Nelson extension. We'll see what happens with DeCastro. There'll obviously be some, attrition, I guess, along the way of maybe a surprise vet or two that maybe does not make it, that maybe you thought would make it. But on top of it, too, I mean, you're gonna eat into that with a little tiny bit with these exclusive rights free agents. We agree that they're probably not going to restricted tender any other restricted free agents, right? I mean, if they did, there's no way you can let McLeod carry a 2 point something cap number, right?
No, I want to bring him back, but I can't bring him back at 2.6. And I think we're seeing that around the league. I think the Eagles just non-tendered their punter because no one can afford these RFA contracts because they're just 1 year and they're eating up too much cap space.
Right. So, it's not hard to, I guess, think that it's plausible that at least Sutton is re-signed. Depending on what you can get done with Juju, maybe Juju, depending on how low you want to go with your cap number. We've said all along it might cost Vince Williams his job, And then once you get past March 17th, Steven Nelson maybe extended. Maybe, who else? Maybe DeCastro. We'll see what they're going to have to do with the Watt contract. Maybe they go outside the norm and structure that thing with fully guarantee the first 2 years in an effort to maybe lower his $10 million cap hit a little bit. Maybe that's where they go get a little bit of that extra money. Don't worry. Obviously you got to worry about the practice squad. You got to worry about the rookie pool differential amount of signing your draft class. It's not as high as people paint that thing because of the displacement, but it is a cost nonetheless. And then, several other minor cap cost along the way that happened after March 17th as well, too. It's a tough puzzle, but once again, I think you might quite possibly get yourself to a point where at least you have Sutton and Juju back.
Right. And even if it's not Juju, let's assume that if he walks and you do Sutton and then you got some play, you can do a Filer and, Alu and those guys too. I mean, you can do Alu probably regardless of Juju, but, you'll have some more options on the board there. Or if you want to do one medium-ish signing in for agency if Juju walks, then you'll have some flexibility to do that if you want to.
All right. Now, what about potential guys from the outside that they might sign? I mean, we talked about maybe this thing will end up playing into the Steelers' hands here with 2 or 3, very, very cheap signings. One that you and I have been predicting, I think, going back to last season. Just we are witches, right?
Well, this one was not hard to figure out with B.J. Finney getting cut by the Bengals. So the second Seattle traded him once he, signed that 2-year deal with them, fell out of favor, never had a role, got dumped at the deadline to Cincinnati in the Carlos Dunlap deal. You knew the Bengals were not keeping him at his $3.1 million base salary for 2021. But yeah, moments before we started the podcast today, got the news the Bengals officially cut B.J. Finney, and Pittsburgh may welcome him back with open arms.
I would be surprised if they don't at this point. I mean, where else is he going to go?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But Pittsburgh makes as much sense and probably more sense than any other team. He's a Steelers fan. Pittsburgh didn't want him to go last year. Obviously, Pouncey's retirement, et cetera, et cetera. You guys know the deal. A reunion is certainly not going to shock me in the least.
Right. So, I mean, nobody's going to pay him much more than the minimum. I'll tell you that, right?
No. Right, and the Steelers shouldn't either. The Steelers would sign him for about the minimum because he didn't play an offensive snap last season.
And you only have, and not technically yet because it hadn't hit the NFLPA, but non-technically, the only center you have on your roster right now is J.C. Hassenauer, and they are absolutely not going to go into the draft with that and that alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I would certainly hope not. Now, they may say, we like Finney, but we might want to look at a better option out there. So maybe they won't sign Finney for that reason. But if he's available and there aren't any other options, then I think bringing in Finney, not only to play center, but just to be a backup guard into your depth overall is going to be important for this team. Because, again, what's behind – let's just assume there's a rookie center in there. What's behind those guys? Dotson, rookie center, hypothetically, and DeCastro. There is no depth on this team either, and this team's going to need some depth.
Absolutely, and we one thing that we've talked about all along with B.J. Finney is really, even though he's a center, what's his better position, at least right now, according to the tape?
Yeah, it's been guard. And someone said today, I just saw on Twitter, what's the difference between Hassenauer and Finney? Finney is bigger, not by a lot, but bigger, stronger, better player overall, and a better guard, more importantly. And so that's the reason why you bring back B.J. Finney.
Right. We're not sending him to the Pro Bowl. We're just saying, look, you got to have a fail-safe stopgap kind of option, and at worst, he becomes your backup, interior guy across all three positions there. Why wouldn't you want that? Especially at the price that you're likely to get it from. Now, obviously, they just don't have the money to upgrade over than that. You gotta work with what you look. People should be conditioned right now that you go on the cheap this time of year here. Now, look, is we talked about Nick Martin? Well, we just don't know what his price is. John Clayton threw out $5 million. Well, the Steelers are not going to pay Nick Martin $5 million, I wouldn't think, right? That's way too rich for even the Steelers' blood, unless they could get him to a multi-year deal with a cap number way below, 3 or right around 3, the 2.5 to 3. Even at $5 million. I mean, I know it's a bargain at $5 million, but you just can't afford it. The Saints center, whose name I always get wrong.
Nick Easton.
What other center around the league is going to get released here in the next 10 days?
Yeah, we'll see. Well, speaking of that, about 30 seconds before Finney's release, I had my article go up on my free agent wish list for offensive linemen, guys who are scheduled to be free agents. And in terms of centers or guards, there's 2 names that really stick out to me. One, and to me, my favorite of this list, and again, this is a boring list of guys you may or may not have heard of before, but that is a realistic list for Steeler fans to digest, is Ben Garland from the 49ers. He does turn 33, 15 career starts, not a lot of experience, but he's a good athlete. He can pull. He's worked in zone schemes. He also, crucially, worked with Chris Morgan in Atlanta, who's now the Steelers' assistant offensive line coach. We talk a lot about Calvin Beachum being, the coach with Adrian Clement at SMU. Well, Garland knows Morgan pretty well, and he's a guy that's going to be cheap. Coming off a calf injury, finished the year on IR this past season, and signed a 1-year contract with the 49ers for 2020 for $2 million. Probably cost even less this time around. He's played center. He's played guard. He's got good size, good athleticism. I think Ben Garland is my favorite. And again, it's favorite realistic option for the Steelers right now.
All right. You also, not on your list, but you wrote up the other day, I think each of us kind of maybe have one to keep an eye on that would fit right into the Kevin Colbert wheelhouse. Maybe not so much on our if we're carding people at the door, but and checking birth certificates, but talk about the wide receiver.
Yeah, Golden Tate got cut by the Giants, and I think, and I say this for 2 reasons. I suggested Golden Tate because this is under the assumption Juju walks. Obviously, if Juju resigns, you're not going to sign probably any free agent receiver, certainly not Golden Tate. And he is older. He is, I think, also 33 years old, but that's good. He's cheap. I think he's going to would be a great slot receiver for Pittsburgh. Tomlin loves him. Tomlin's always gushed about Golden Tate. I've had those comments for a couple of years by now. And then 2, he's going to fill that Juju role of that tough, physical slot receiver, the dude that's going to run that option route on 3rd down, dude that's going to catch the shield slant on 3rd and 2, be a good run blocker, somewhat of a veteran presence. I know it was kind of a rocky season with the Giants this past year, but I think Golden Tate would be a really good fit as that slot receiver and just doing that dirty work stuff at a much cheaper rate, because I can't imagine he's going to command a whole lot of money. My prediction for him was 2 years, $6 million.
The age restriction thing is going to be tough to get past, but if it's going to happen on any side of the ball, it'd probably happen on the offensive side of the ball, as history has shown us under the with Kevin Colbert, right? I mean, they are more apt to sign an outside free agent over 30 on the offensive side of the ball than they are on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was actually decent history that shows that they're willing to do that. Now, you look at, Lance Moore, for example, was, I think, 31 when he came over.
Right.
You can go way far back. I know people won't even remember this name, but Terrence Mathis was 35 when they signed him. So I don't think the age thing is going to matter as much. Tate would essentially be a 2-year deal, but probably a one-and-done type player like Morgan Burnett, like John Bostic. And if you want to win now, if you're in that mode of let's get guys who are going to help you for this season, right or wrong, Golden Tate would do that.
And once again, you're only doing that if Juju's out the door.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, you still like to bring back Juju, but if failing that, and I have other slot options that are probably even worse than Golden Tate. I'll probably have an article for that on Monday. But I think Tate, again, a guy that Tomlin really likes, basically called him the the current day Hines Ward a couple of years ago and would fit that Juju role of those tough, gritty catches because they don't have that on the roster right now. I mean, McLeod, even though he's a slot option, he's not going to run the route tree that Juju's going to run right now. Now, maybe Claypool could do it. You could kind of try to figure this thing out, but they really don't have a guy with that Juju skill set.
I'm going to see your Golden Tate.
You're going to raise me.
I'm going to raise you a Josh Hill, who I didn't see potentially hitting the market here. Josh Hill, now formerly of the New Orleans Saints. People probably saying who? We get that, but look, if you want to talk, and we'll obviously see what happens here with another one of our favorites that Alex and I have talked about, Jesse James. What's going to happen with him in Detroit? Are they going to cut him loose and all like that? But this team has to get another tight end on this roster that at least can block on the cheap prior to the draft, right?
I would think so. I mean, there is really nothing behind Ebron right now.
All right, enter Josh Hill, and former undrafted free agent out of Idaho State, right? I mean, aren't you a Vandals fan? But you're an Idaho fan.
Idaho, just
right,
the old Kibby Dome, but yeah.
Did you follow as an Idaho fan? Did you ever kind of? Is there a rivalry?
I think so, yeah. I don't know if there's a fierce Idaho State-Idaho rivalry going on there.
Go Potatoes!
Go Potatoes.
But
I'm mad that you raised my raise. That's a string bet. That's illegal.
Okay. Anyway, about Josh Hill, what do you know about him versus what I know about him, and is he going to be around that million mark? And more importantly, is it a fit? Is it plausible?
Mm-hmm. Well, he's 31, been a blocking tight end his whole life. So yeah, I'd say he's a fit for Pittsburgh. He's cheap, he can block, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, 6'5", 250 pounds. Just 2 years ago, he had a career high, 20-something, 24, 25 receptions. I had 25 receptions, 226 yards, and 3 touchdowns. If you go peer in on his tape real quick from last season, it looked good as a blocker to me, man. You're probably one of the upper half of the league blocking tight ends in the league. I'll go that far. When it comes to that, he can play. Obviously he's not a special teams dynamo, but I think since 2013 he's got 27 special teams tackles. You're not going to use him as a all 4 teams guy, but it probably can get something done for you on kickoff return and maybe kick coverage. And obviously the field goal team as a wing guy's got some experience there as well too. Will this happen? Obviously, we don't know. But, I mean, if you want realistic names that could potentially Kevin Colbert have his eye on, but certainly we would certainly look like witches if one of these two came true. Mm-hmm. But it's a guy that Kevin Colbert should have picked the phone up and called his agent.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing the Saints didn't cut him because he sucks. The Saints just cut him because they are in the worst cap situation of any team in football right now.
That's probably twofold. Look, I mean, he is older, right?
Sure. He's 31.
He's 31. He's been with him forever. He was scheduled to earn, I think, $2.6 million. And you want to talk about a team that's cap strapped, or at least was cap strapped as much as the Steelers were heading into the offseason. It was the Saints, right? I mean, because they had, we've already talked about some of that maneuvering that they've had to do with Drew Brees and all like that to kind of maneuver this thing down. They needed a cap space.
Right. They needed it more than they needed Hill, but that doesn't mean that Hill can't play. I think that's the point you're making, and I agree with that. So, yeah, I think Hill's a good name as a blocking number 2 tight end. It's a very, Leonard Pope type signing that'd be coming in if that happens.
Look, he's in my opinion, he's 3 times better than what Leonard Pope was.
Mm-hmm. That's probably fair. I was just trying to think of a name, and I went to Sean McHugh, and I went, that doesn't fit. So I pivoted to Pope. You're right, probably better than what Pope was.
Okay. All right. Anybody else kind of on the radar here?
Yeah, the other names I had on my wish list for the offense line, I'll do one for skill positions probably for Monday and then do a couple for defense, so I don't think there'll be too many names I'll have. on the defensive wish list, but other offensive linemen, Joe Looney of the Cowboys, turning 31 in August, started 12 games last year to replace Travis Frederick, good size, center guard experience. The Cowboys feel like they're going to let him go. Heard he's a good locker room guy as well. Mentioned Senio Kelemete of the Texans, versatile lineman, played guard, played tackle, even played center in the preseason with the Saints several years ago. A little bit younger option, Pat Elflein from the Jets, former pedigree guy, Ohio State guy. Steelers at his pro day in 2017. Played 6 starts with the Jets last year after the Vikings waived him. And then for some tackles, mentioned Kelvin Beachum a million times. We know that story there. And then I mentioned James Hurst, and I always thought James Hurst was a terrible tackle for the Ravens. He kind of resurfaced with the Saints this past year. Kind of got some work as a 6 offensive lineman, tackle eligible guy, which could be a role the Steelers will be looking for if Zach Banner hypothetically is your starting left tackle. So Hurst on a minimum deal as a tackle guard option is someone to think about.
All right. And well, there might be more, right? I mean, there might be more street free agents here to maybe talk about. Once again, and I put this in one of my terrible takes since we started this past week. I fully expect this team to do something at the center position, and I think even a couple of days ago I mentioned the possibility again of Finney circling back. We'll see if that happens, but this team needs to do something, in my opinion, before the draft. With a minimum experienced player at center, tight end, where else?
Potentially edge, depending on how they want to view this draft class. I wouldn't be shocked to see a lower-level outside linebacker come in.
Okay, and we'll see how the market floods or whatnot. I have a feeling that some of these things are going to work out into the Steelers' favor here. And it's not going to be sexy. People aren't going to be throwing parades, but when we get to by the time the draft rolls around, we're going to say, that's Kevin Colbert.
Right. That was his sitcom back in the early 2000s, right? That's Kevin Colbert.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Growing pains, right?
Yeah, right. All right, Dave.
Did you watch Full House growing up or no?
I did. I'm not a big Full House fan. I never got into the show. It was just too cheesy even for me.
You were a Saved by the Bell fan, weren't you?
I love Kelly Kapowski.
Were you? Are you?
And Screech just passed away. It's very sad.
Kelly or Jesse?
Oh, Kelly Kapowski, all the way. Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
Yeah, I like those train wrecks. It was always Jesse for
Oh my goodness. You would.
Yeah, one of those ones that might potentially set something of yours on fire,
That's it. That's an assessment of Saved by the Bell I've never heard before.
Yeah, there you go. And who is your Slater or Zach?
Oh, Zach Morris.
I was Slater.
Gracie Slater.
I was Slater. Yeah.
Full House was weird just because you knew Bob Saget was this wholesome figure on the show, but you knew him as a comedian was just so blue. It was just kind of weird to think about those two things.
Now, obviously not that I was tuning in every week because I'm obviously a lot older than you, but how could you not be aware of that show? And look, my wife is big into that 90210 and what was the other one? What was the there was a few others I think she was big into back at the time there. So unfortunately I know a lot about several of these players. I mean not players, shows.
Bob Saget, a free agent.
Right. There you go.
All right, Dave, where do you want to go from here? We do want to talk about one of the players I know both of us have studied. The Steelers reportedly met with, or at least will meet with virtually, Auburn receiver Anthony Schwartz. You did the great contextualization on him. I did the scouting report on him. We both came away with basically the same, feeling. I believe that he's a fast guy, great in the line, but that is about it.
Yeah, I think both. I didn't go as deep as you did, I don't think, on the breakdown there. I only contextualized 2020 targets there, but I think we were able to overall come to the same conclusion on this, and that I love that when that happens, when you get two different set of eyes on it at two different ways, then you can pretty much come to the same conclusion on the player. Now let me ask: did you watch any of his pre-2020 film?
Yeah, I have, I think, 2 games in 2018. I think I bounced around a little bit of 2019. So I tried to get the whole gamut of stuff because in 2018 he was doing more stuff as a runner and a little bit more differently involved in that offense. So I wanted to kind of get the complete picture of Anthony Schwartz.
I guess the biggest question I had not watching that older tape was anything that gives you the idea that this guy's a deep threat down the field that we didn't see in 2020. At least I didn't see in 2020.
I mean, he is a deep threat because he is literally going to be one of the fastest players on the field, but that is kind of the extent of it with him. There is no conventional route tree. It's manufactured to get him touches outside of the deep ball. It's kind of like Ray McCloud, but less agile without the return ability. And generally for me, if you're a guy that has to be manufactured touches on screens and RPOs and jets and stuff like that, and you're not an elite level talent guy, probably not going to be worth it because I'm not going to be manufacturing touches for you over, Chase Claypool or, a top receiver, Deontay Johnson, guys like that. So, there's value, but he's just a straight line kind of guy. He's a, one trick pony speed guy, which is important. It's rare. Dude's going to run like 4.3 something, really impressive, but you can only value that so much.
We would be. I listen to him as a day 3 guy. I can't see any reason why you would want to draft him. In fact, to me, he's like a 6th or 7th round guy, and from what I've seen, and I think you've kind of come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I think I ultimately put like an early day 3 on him just because that speed probably will get him drafted. Because at these pro days, he's probably going to get listed at like 4.2 something, 4.25 because these pro day times are going to be quicker. But I compared him to Aldrick Robinson, who was a kind of one-note vertical guy in his career.
Right.
So that was reported on Twitter. A little disappointing on that, but he's fast and. Again, you can't teach 4.2 something whenever he's going to run.
Yeah, that's why you got to watch the tape, right? Because he's painted. He was immediately kind of, I think, painted one way on the Twitter machine by the YouTube scouts, and then you turn around and it's unfortunate. Sometimes you get your mouth's all watering to kind of, all right, I can't wait to look at this kid, and then you go, oh man, but it's like bad cheese. But anyway, have you been watching the History Channel and that History of Food?
I have not. I guess you have.
Oh, maybe man, you got
it on cheese.
Man, you got to set your VCR for that, man. That's they've done cheese and chocolate already. I don't know what else I maybe have taped and all like that. But
any fun facts you can share about history of chocolate or cheese?
Just that the World War I essentially saved or really put Kraft on the map because at that point he had already figured out kind of the pasteurization process, but it was like a liquid, it was a liquid cheese, and but even after that, I think it was something like 3 years into that, he was almost out of business because he really still was struggling to find a market for his pasteurized kind of liquid cream cheese, if you will. World War I obviously started taking place, and they needed, they found out that this thing had shelf life. It tasted good, and obviously was easy to ship and all like that. And once they got that over to the troops and all like that, the troops loved it. And then obviously once the war ends and they come home, they had much like chocolate, they had a hankering for that, and pretty much the market demanded it. So that's a quick story about had World War I not happened, Kraft cheese or at least the company that we know it probably didn't survive. And then Pabst, the brewer, also got into the cheese business because of prohibition and all like that. They had to find a way to kind of shift the not go out of business because you're making beer and that's your primary thing. So they kind of copied Kraft and that process there during the war or during Prohibition to kind of save the company there. And once obviously Kraft got a hold of it, news traveled very slowly back then. Evidently, he obviously had the patent already on the pasteurization process, and then went after the Pabst company because they had got into the kind of the canned cheese business at that time as well too. And instead he probably could have put them out of business, but instead of that, he worked out a deal where he would get royalties off of per pound or whatnot. I think they said 1/8 of a cent per pound, and they could continue, to produce the cheese. Now, obviously, after Prohibition ended and all like that, Pabst got back into the beer business, and I think they sold that division back off to craft there. So that's way too much. That's way too much news about cheese on this Friday.
That was your terrible take yesterday, wasn't it? I think I remember listening to that. I'm just kidding. All right, Dave. What else you want to talk about? I have something in my notes here. I cannot read what I wrote. So if you remember what else we had planned to talk about and save me here, I would appreciate that.
Well, look over the site real quick here. I'm trying.
Or we can get to reader emails if there's nothing else. But I just have one stray note, and it's just a travesty of my handwriting here. I cannot read what in the world I was writing about. Todd McShay says Najee Harris in his latest mock draft. Najee Harris's name. You're going to hear that a lot in connection with Pittsburgh during the rest of mock draft season.
Absolutely, you will. And so with that, let's see here. I guess we should probably get to some reader emails here.
It was Matt Canada. That's what I'm writing here. Matt
Canada
okay.
What stuck out to there were several good things in those interviews. So what stuck out to you?
Yeah, I don't know what stuck out to me in terms of Canada. Who wrote about that last night? Was that you writing about?
I did, and I think Marksy did as well, too, a little bit.
Yeah, we're talking about Ben, though, was the part that kind of stuck out to me the most, talking about the accuracy and competitiveness and the work that Ben puts in practice. Here's the thing with Canada that I want to make mention of, and I still want to write this article about Canada quarterback mobility sometime in the near future here. I know I've said it a little bit. I know many other people said it more aggressively that, Canada, he can't work with Ben. It's not a good fit. They're not going to mesh. To an extent, I understand that, but also – look at the quarterbacks Canada has worked with in college before. He's worked with Nathan Peterman. He's worked with Joel Stave. He's worked with kids you've never heard of at Northern Illinois and places like that. I think he's pretty happy working with a Hall of Fame quarterback in Big Ben. I understand there's going to be some level of limitation there in terms of mobility and stuff like that, but I think Canada is pretty happy. If you can work with Joel Stave, you can work with Big Ben.
I think so as well, too. And I think one of the big takeaways, and it's obvious, and we talk about it all the time during the season and during the offseason as well, too. A good offensive coordinator finds a way to utilize, to scheme with the players that he has instead of just putting, trying to force his scheme onto players. He builds a scheme around the talent that he has. And I think there's a great quote in there specifically about what Canada's thoughts on that kind of process is there. So it's obvious, and the task will be with Canada is how can he build this thing around Ben. Plain and simple. I thought he said one of the great quotes in there was, you have to be able to run the ball when people know that you're going to run it, and you have to be able to pass the ball when people know that you're going to pass it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very standard, philosophy, but you can appreciate that. And also in that series, that patch of the draft, I think the Steelers are doing more comments from Art Rooney in Canada and basically everyone they interviewed saying we got to get better at running the football. So that's not a shock to anybody, but just reaffirmation. This team's going to be addressing those areas really heavily in free agency and more importantly in the draft.
Absolutely. So going to be interesting to see how they build around this now.
Yep, exactly. All right, Dave. I think that's everything that we wanted to talk about today. Let's get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's do it. And I imagine we got some pretty tasty emails in here today. Let's see. Alan Bellomo writes in, good morning. Do you see any possibility that the NFL will begin using a minor league system? Oops, lost my place here. To help develop players before they appear in the NFL, sort of like the league they had in Europe a few years ago. Other leagues such as Major League Baseball and NHL use them, and it helps players develop before they arrive to the main team. Thank you, Alan Bellomo, Edinburgh, PA. I think we've gotten some emails from Alan before here. Look, nobody would like it more to see a minor league kind of system work than me. I remember the old NFL, Europe and things along those lines, and I was hoping that we would. I loved the USFL back in the day, and I was just a kid. Unfortunately, just it takes money, right? I mean, unless the money's there. And more importantly, unless it's profitable, unless somebody can make money off of it, then it's not going to survive.
Which none of these leagues have done.
Right.
None of these upstart leagues have ever been sustainable. Maybe arena football, I guess, but that's about it. And even they're contracting. So the college game exists. The NFL uses the college game to its benefit. So they're not going to throw money into a feeder system when they have the NCAA.
I would think that the only, personally, from what we've seen as of late, I would think really the best chance they would have is to do it back overseas again, right?
Yeah, but is the interest going to be there enough? I mean, I think the NFL would just rather put an NFL team over there like they're half trying to do right now.
Well, I think you could still do that, and I think ultimately that's what will happen. I think Shad Khan can't wait to get them out of Jacksonville and overseas there. But I guess what I'm saying is if it does happen, I would think that the better chances of it happening would be overseas.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it happening at all. I just don't think the NFL has any desire to spend, and especially right now, given the circumstances.
All right, Rich Hudd writes in, good day, Dave and Alex. I want to bring up a different approach to the whole running back in the first round thing. As my old Uncle Dave told me, one of the best things a running back can offer is pass blocking. Make no mistake, the Steelers are losing their best pass blocking running back in Connor. This is where I see even more value to Najee. If his comp is Bell and Bell was worth a first, I think Najee should be as well for the reason I just stated. As a former running back, a lot of people overlook the dirty work that goes into the position, pass blocking being one of them, and it stands to reason that the last time the line was excellent, they had a patient runner and a great backfield catcher and pass blocker. I think this makes him work the back. I think this makes him work the back of the first.
Worse, I guess is what he's trying to say.
Yeah. What say you? Great jobs on the show, and the terrible take is awesome. So, by the way, we're getting a lot of great feedback. It's probably because of you, not because of me. But great feedback so far on the terrible take, and I think you've got another one. Any hint about what the Friday terrible take is going to be around?
I've kind of bounced around. I'll certainly make them topical at times, but this is just a gripe about the draft thing. It's going to sound like something that you would say actually about guys
Lord,
that
you're losing people.
That's a reach, or that guy won't be there, and just a little mini tangent on why I don't think that makes a lot of sense, especially in this draft season.
Man, that's the most aggravating thing about having to do these mock drafts and all like that is let's learn about the player. We could sit there and argue all week, weeks and weeks about, that guy. Nobody's going to get a mock draft right. All right, let's just put that out there. This is turning into a Dave terrible. I'm stealing your terrible take here.
I got to do something new. I got to.
Yeah, but man, don't bitch about that guy won't be there. Use the mocks to discuss the player and not where the player potentially would be drafted there. Thanks for the email, Rich, there, and let's move along here. Let's see, Andreas and Antone has a question. Do you think Santonio Holmes is a top 5 receiver in Pittsburgh history? He has Brown, Stallworth, Swan, and Ward in there as his 4. Is Santonio Holmes number 5? I don't know. We forgot Louis Lips in there, right? I mean,
did he mention AB?
He does have AB as AB at top. Antonio Brown, Stallworth, Swan, and Ward. I guess he's asking is who's number 5?
Yeah, Louis Lips, Yancey Thigpen, Buddy Dial. I don't think Holmes is number 5 now. Roy Jefferson even in his heyday.
How much does that catch though elevate Santonio Holmes though? I
don't have a list. I'd have to think about it some more. But my first thought is not. I mean, it's as great of a play as that was, and that was obviously an incredible play. That Santonio Holmes is not the 5th best receiver in Steelers history.
Isn't the great David O updating his top Steelers of all time list?
That just came out last week. I can see where he ranks them.
Where does he have the receivers ranked in there?
Let me scroll back through because I know he came up with that. Vamp a little bit here while I pull this list up.
But that's I just look at Santonio Holmes just had another birthday a couple of days ago as well too. Once again, if you somewhere on my Twitter feed is that interview going back around Super Bowl time there of Santonio giving it's 22 minutes long, but it's kind of all the stuff that kind of led up to the big play in the Super Bowl about the Cardinals. It is fantastic. I don't know why they didn't promote that even better on the NFL.com site, but look for that because it especially during the offseason, it's 22 minutes of greatness, and I thought Santonio Holmes did a great job in that video.
Yeah, I'm glad you tweeted it out because that's how I found it, and it was absolutely fantastic. Here's how David O ranks the receivers in his latest updated top 500. His rankings, not mine. Hines Ward, number 1. Antonio Brown, number 2. John Stallworth, number 3. Lynn Swann, number 4. At number 5, Louis Lips, number 5, 40th overall. Santonio Holmes is not 6th. That's Roy Jefferson. Then followed by Juju at 7. And then Santonio Holmes, 8th. Best receiver, 116 overall.
So 116th overall on his list then.
Right. 2 spots behind Greg Warren and 1 spot behind Terry.
Oh,
Greg Warren, better than Santonio Holmes. The longevity's there.
Tweet that back out while you got it up, Alex, and for people listening to the podcast that might have missed David O's rankings there and all. So there you go on that. All right, we'll move on to the next question here from Bryce. Hey guys, it's Bryce. Fun question. I know we love AFC North, but if the Steelers had to move to one of the other 3 divisions in the AFC, which division do you think would make for the most intriguing matchups for the Steelers and why?
It's a good question.
You definitely don't want them going out west, right? Because of all the travel. So I think the AFC West would be out.
I guess he's just saying like a matchup standpoint. I don't know. The East would be fun now that it's kind of, the Bills, I guess, are top of the East right now, but that's just kind of an open division. So we could argue, I guess, the South or the East.
I would probably go most intriguing matchups for the Steelers and why. Yeah, it would be pretty close between the South and the East and all, right?
I think I'd give the edge to the South in terms of more intriguing matchups, but you could go either way.
What are the Colts going to be in 2021? They should be fairly competitive, right?
How good do you think Carson Wentz is going to be? I guess is the answer to that question.
Well, I think their defense alone should at least keep them maybe in some games. Obviously, Houston, if they get rid of, they're going to be moving on from. There's no way they can't trade Deshaun Watson. I don't think at this point.
You think they're adamant they're not trading?
That's all posturing. I think. I think we'll be able to look back here in a couple more weeks and say, "Aha! I told you they were going to trade Deshaun." I would. I don't. There's so much that you're not. I don't think it's salvageable at this point. So,
what about Russell Wilson? Is he getting dealt? Because those rumors are starting to heat up. Like they're not going away here.
I would be more shocked at that because the dead money. But we've seen some teams move on from some pretty damn big dead money hits lately, right? So
Eagles,
I don't think you can rule it out. But anyway, I guess I'd go with Alex and choose the South there. All right. Let's see what else do we have here real quick. Surely we have somebody wants to know they are interested in interviewing for the director player engagement position.
Oh, yeah, that's official, by the way. I know Aditi reported that 2 weeks ago, but Terry Cousin no longer appears on the Steelers team site as their player engagement coordinator.
So Jerry, a guy named Jerry wants to interview for that position.
Emailing the wrong people.
Yeah, it's not us. It's not us. Let's see here. Darren Boyer writes in, what would happen if the team decided to cut Terrell Edmunds? He has a relatively high salary cap number compared to his performance, but I seem to recall special circumstances for first rounders. Is his salary this year fully guaranteed, or could the Steelers look at him as a cut option? I'm not as down on Edmonds as some, but I don't necessarily see him getting a second contract with the team anyway. Look, Darren, that's just not going to happen. For starters, Edmonds' contract this year pays him 1.938, almost $2 million, and 756,000 of that's fully guaranteed. So you would save, prior to roster displacement, almost $1.183 million prior to displacement. Subtract 660,000 from that, you're in the $500,000 cap savings category. Do you really want to move on from Terrell Edmonds to save $500,000? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. The only interesting question about Edmonds and his contract status is, does the team pick up his fifth-year option, which is, when does that occur? May, June?
Yeah, right around in May is I think early May is the deadline for that. I mean, obviously they're going to pick up the fifth-year option on Minkah Fitzpatrick, because his is due to be picked up for 2022. Edmonds is the decision on Edmonds is due as well too. We don't have final numbers of what the amounts in 2022 will be just yet. We will once the cap is set. But obviously, one of the factors now that goes into that decision is that becomes fully guaranteed once you pick it up. Has Edmonds done enough to want? That's the biggest decision. They're not going to cut him, Darren. So you might as well get that out of your head right now. The question should be is, are they going to pick up his fifth-year option? I think you're in the camp of them doing it, aren't you, Alex?
Yes, I think I'm pretty confident they will, and I think I would if I was the Steelers, but I'm more confident in the fact that they actually will do it.
I am less. I could see that. I could see them doing it, obviously, because we're talking about 2022. I'm just not so convinced they will, though. But it's definitely, that's one of the things. Once we get past free agency and once we get past the draft, it's going to be something to pay close attention to, I think, overall, because it's a big decision that the team has to make during the summer part of this offseason here. Mm-hmm. All right, I think we've got through most of them there, Alex. Not a lot of questions overall, I don't think, about the whole Ben thing. Jelani writes in, with it looking more and more likely that Dupree and Hilton will depart in free agency, and depending upon where the cap comes in, that Vince Williams becomes a cap casualty, do you guys think the defense can still be a great unit, or do you think they will take a step back and maybe be good but not great? Although I do like Highsmith, and I think he will develop into a good player, the defense didn't look the same to me when Dupree went down, especially in the running game. And if I'm not mistaken, the Steelers' sacks per game, turnovers forced went down after he got hurt. Feel free to correct me on that. Thanks as always. Keep up the good work. Look, I don't think it's unthinkable to think that this defense might take a step back.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you're right about that. I mean, the defense certainly, felt the weight of losing Bud Dupree and Devin Bush, and their play was worse because of it. I still think that they can be a very, very good defense. I mean, how do you want to determine between good and great is kind of a tough line to walk, because A, they're still going to get a lot of pressure, and B, they're going to create a lot of takeaways. And to me, those are the two hallmarks of good defenses in today's NFL, with how efficient offenses are and how many points they score. Defenses you can get pressure, and defenses who steal possessions are some of the best defenses in football. So they'll still have those elements at play. But sure, I think that they won't be a better unit than they were when they were healthy last year. I'll put it that way.
All right. I think that they could still be a top 10 defense, especially when it comes to adjusted net. They'll be fine overall in the adjusted net. They should be fine overall in the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. That's all I'm worried about. I would like to see the run the play against the run a little bit, but I tell you what's going to play a big part in this, Alex, I think, is the offense is going to have to. The offense can help the defense be better, right? By possessing the football a little bit longer, by up in the red zone, by putting more, put the defense in better positions in the fourth quarter of the game. I think will go a long way. I know that's kind of a cliche, obvious thing there, but if the offense can get better running the football in red zone, by proxy, I think it makes the defense a little bit better. You got to keep these guys out of these situations late in games where where it's one-score games, I think, and put the defense in better situations where they know the opposition's going to pass in, that way you kind of can kind of tee off on that, right?
Sure, I'm with you 100%. I think that always helps when one side is helping the other, and then not to get on my soapbox again, but the offense getting off to a faster start and having an early lead for once would also be nice for this defense.
All right, how about we get out of here after 90 minutes again? Is that kind of a record, us getting out of here with podcasts under an hour and 45 minutes, like a couple times in a row? So why don't we do that? You'll have a terrible take up on Friday. Alex, what do you think about letting listeners or followers submit possibilities for a Saturday terrible take?
I think it's a cool idea. I think we should give it a shot.
All right, Alex and I will talk about that a little bit more, about the possibility of that happening. Let us know your feedback as well too. Do any of you want to submit? It'd be awesome, I think, to have once a week a listener or a follower submit a 3-minute or less terrible take, and we had that every Saturday become a terrible tradition there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button for $25 for one calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site. That's been very popular. Please make sure to look out for these the new Terrible Take series. So far, the feedback's been awesome on that. We want to hear your feedback on that as well, too. So theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. And let us know if you like the idea of a user or reader or listener or whatever terrible take on Saturday. I think that'd be pretty interesting as well, too. We're excited to get the feedback on that. So in the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.